Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. If you're interested in having the full in-person Plum seminar presented at your location, just go to my website, plumtheology.com, and I'd be happy to answer any of your emails, help set a date. The Plum seminar is ideal for parents who want to disciple their children, married couples, college students, and youth. And so if any of those fit your category, your church, or a Christian organization, please send me an email. I'll be happy to come out to you guys. All right, thanks a lot.
Unity. The unity in sex. Another one that tends to be very obvious to most people, right? Two become one flesh. We usually read these passages on at our weddings and stuff like that. And it's quoted, several times. In Genesis 2:24 is that passage we see where God says, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. And it's repeated 3 times in the New Testament, once by Jesus when he's asked about divorce. And then he says, they say, how come it's okay to get a divorce then if it's not supposed to be like this? And Jesus told them, it was never supposed to be like that. That's why God said, what it says in the scriptures, 2 shall become one flesh. God only allowed divorce because their hearts were so hardened towards marriage. Right? God allowed them to get divorced in a way because in that culture, and this is a little tangent, but in that culture, in the ancient Near East culture, that was one of the best ways for women to still be protected is if God permitted them to get divorced sometimes. And so, anyways, that's a whole other topic in itself. But the unity purpose in sex, is repeated time and time again. When Paul, we already read this passage in 1 Corinthians 6, when Paul confronts the church in Corinth about having sex with temple prostitutes. Don't you know that to become one flesh, you are now one with a prostitute when you have sex with her? And then, of course, we see it in Paul's teaching in Ephesians 5. He says, for this reason, 2 shall become one flesh. And the beautiful part here is that he brings in a deeper reason as to why. Is because it reflects Christ in the church. That's why 2 become one. And so when we look at the unity purpose of sex, it is to represent and reflect the unity, the eternal and unbreakable bond that is between God and his people. This is why breakups are so hard when there's sex involved. This is why makeup sex is so good in marriages. Because what's happening before what leads up to makeup sex? It's 2 people who are unreconciled in the relationship with one another, and then they become reconciled again. And what's the whole climax of that? It's makeup sex, typically. And it's because the 2 who were once unreconciled are now reconciled once again, and now they are enjoying that reconciliation, that peace with one another that was supposed to be there the whole time. And that's the beauty of makeup sex. There is a deep theology to makeup sex, okay? There is a deeper understanding of it. It's not just because it feels good, it's all in the right moment, whatever, but it reflects something so much deeper, so much better. Is that the reconciliation that we once did not have with God, we now have because of Christ. And that will never go away. And so the unity purpose of sex beautifully reflects the eternal and unbreakable bond between God and his people. Christ and his church. We worship a triune God, Father, Son, and Spirit. Jesus himself as the Son, the second person of the Trinity, was always in the Father's will. And isn't that what we're to do as Christians? We are always to be in the will of God, right? We are to be seeking and searching the scriptures so that we are found to be one with God, aligned with his will. Isn't that when our marriages function the best? When we're actually on the same page with finances? On the same page for leading our children spiritually. We're on the same page dealing with in-laws and each other's parents, right? That's when our marriages function the best, is when we are in line with one another's will. And even more so is when our will as a marriage is in line with the will of God. And so the unity purpose of sex is so much more than just all these hormones mixing and God, it's like a glue when you glue 2 pieces of paper and you peel them apart, and you can never take them apart again, right? Stuff like that. We have all these cool illustrations about that, right? But it's so much deeper than just the physical consequences that come out of broken relationships or breakups and all that kind of stuff. It's about reflecting the beautiful relationship between God and his people. For those who are in Christ, they are in Christ for eternity, and nothing can separate us from the love of God. That's the beauty about waiting until you say, I do. That's why it's so important to wait until marriage, right? So for our students and teenagers, this is why it's so important to wait until they're married. Even if they think they love each other, no matter how much they think they love each other, it is important that they wait until they get married. Why? Because are they ready to marry each other? Oftentimes the answer is no, right? They just want to have sex. Right? It's like, well, are you ready to marry this person? And a lot of times they'll say, well, I don't know, but I think we love each other. And they tend to try to separate the two. But this is why in the Old Testament, in that culture as well, in the ancient Near East culture, if you had sex with someone, you're married. It was that man's job to take care of that woman for the rest of her life, right? And so that's the whole importance of oh man, what is the word? I'm blanking on the word now. Consummating the relationship. Because at that point, they're considered to be one. So my advice when I talk to young couples and college students, stuff like that, when they think they're ready to get married, they say, well, what if we just, why must we wait for another 2 weeks if we already know that we're going to get married? We're engaged, we're going to get married very soon. Why can't we just have sex now? Because we already know that we're going to get married. Well, I'll ask them, well, okay, then how about you just get married now and make it official, and then you can have your ceremony later, right? What I find oftentimes is that they don't want to do that because they're still not okay with making that solid commitment and making it official. And so the challenge I give for young couples, if they want to get married in secret or they're not comfortable of making their relationship publicly known to their loved ones and their friends or their church especially, there's probably a problem there. That's probably a red flag if they're not willing to celebrate their relationship before all their loved ones and those that should be celebrating with them. And no matter how much they say that they're ready to get married, they're probably not ready to get married if they're not willing to celebrate that relationship publicly with their loved ones that should be there. I think it's very similar to baptism. When someone gets baptized, it's a time for the church to celebrate, right? It shouldn't be done in secret if it could be avoided, right? Baptism is time for the brothers and sisters in Christ to celebrate the symbolism of someone being buried to Christ and risen in with new life with Christ. And so when it comes to the unity, purpose, and sex, it needs to reflect each and every time. Not just the first time, not just on the wedding night, not just on the honeymoon, but each and every single time two people have sex, it should reflect the pleasure that God has in his people. It should reflect God's love in each and every time. And it should reflect the eternal and unbreakable bond that God has with his people. Marriage, sex in marriage is no different. There is examples in marriage where sex is not unifying. If we set up quotas or barter for sex, that's why I call it bartering for sex. If I do this, then will you give me this, right? Those things do not promote unity in marriage. They promote division because it's setting both parties up for failure at some point. And so even there's examples of sex in marriage that does not promote God's love and doesn't promote the unity between Christ and his church and God and his people.